Hello again, and welcome to day number 349. My name is Mary, and today's story title is Paul's Arrest. When Paul and his friends came to Jerusalem, they met with the church in that city and gave the money that had been gathered by the Gentiles to help the Jewish believers in Christ who were poor. The apostle James, the Lord's brother, who was the head of the church in Jerusalem, gave Paul and his friends a glad welcome and praised God for the good work they did among the Gentiles. About a week after Paul came to Jerusalem, he was worshiping in the temple when some Jews from the lands around Ephesus saw him. They at once stirred up a crowd and took hold of Paul, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who teaches all men everywhere against our people and against our law and against this temple. Besides, he has brought Gentiles into the temple and has made the holy house unclean." They had seen Paul walking in the city with one of his friends from Ephesus, who was not a Jew, and they started the false report that Paul had taken him into the temple. When the Jews set up this cry against Paul, all the city was stirred up, and a great crowd gathered around Paul. They dragged Paul out of the temple into the outer court and were about to kill him in their rage. But in the castle on the north of the temple was a Roman guard of soldiers, 1,000 men under the command of an officer. Word came to this officer that all Jerusalem was in a riot and a wild mob had seized the temple. He called out his soldiers and their captains and rushed quickly into the temple, into the midst of the crowd, beating and trampling Paul. The chief captain took Paul from their hands, and thinking he must have done something very wicked to start such a riot, ordered him to be fastened with 2 chains. Then he asked who Paul was and what he had done. Everyone answered at once, some shouting one thing and some another. Since the chief captain could understand nothing in the confusion, he commanded the soldiers to take Paul into the castle. The crowd made a rush to seize Paul and take him away from the soldiers, but they cried him through the throng and up the stone steps that led into the castle, while the angry Jews cried, "Away with him! Kill him!" Just as they reached the platform at the door of the castle, Paul very quietly spoke to the chief captain in his own language, which was Greek. He said, "May I say something to you?" The officer was surprised, and he answered Paul, "Do you know Greek? Aren't you that man from Egypt who rose up against the rulers and let out into the wilderness 4,000 murderers?" But Paul said, "I am a Jew of Tarsus in, in Cilicia. I belong to no small city. I beg you, give me permission to speak to the people." And that was the end of the Lord's word. Now we come to the final discussion questions, and we have 4 of them. The first one says, how did the Apostle James greet the people from the churches and Paul? How did the Apostle James greet the people from the churches and Paul? Number 2, what happened when Paul went to the temple? What happened when Paul went to the temple? Third question, why did the chief captain put Paul in chains? Why did the chief captain put Paul in chains? Last question, number 4, what did Paul ask the captain to do? What did Paul ask the captain to do? And now we do come to the last of our day number 349. And it's always great to have you with me. So may God bless us all until our next meeting here at YouTube. Have a good night and Merry Christmas, everyone, again. Bye bye.